a lot of players have that kind of misconception where they always think that they're going to earn more and more money, and that's not the case. You might be 22 years old and be on the best money you're ever going to be on. So, investing in a property in your 20s is going to serve you really well later in life. So we've been able to capitalize on some of those opportunities with older landlords looking to get out a little bit and get properties at a really good price. Memorable, when you viewed 4 or 5 different houses in the day and you really remember that one bathroom that had the really nice sink or the really nice taps, whatever it may be, those small little details are things that are proven really popular. And one thing that I've been really impressed with Bathshack is how affordable a lot of the really beautiful bathrooms are too.
Hello Danny, welcome. It's a pleasure to have you here at Bathshack for our new podcast and conversation with. How are you doing today?
I'm very well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Great to have you. So you're here from, firstly, Macclesfield SC, but more recently it is the Footballers Property Group, isn't that right? Where you're helping footballers or just general people into the property investment sphere from being there from yourself. Learning that process yourself to now helping others, isn't that right?
Yep.
Yeah. So if you could go ahead and give, for those who don't know maybe about you, they probably do, but for those who don't, could you please go ahead and give me a bit of an introduction to yourself and the Footballers Property Group?
Yeah, so I'm Danny Elliott. I am a footballer for Macclesfield FC. I'm 30 years old. I'm going into what will be next season, my 3rd season at Macclesfield, but I've played football up and down the country for the last 8 years or so professionally. When I signed for Macclesfield about 2 years ago, I decided to set up the Footballers Property Group, which is a business that helps other footballers and now non-footballers too, kind of make those first steps into property investment, making sure they do it right. And we help them with the buying process and renovations and things like that.
Unreal. It's such an interesting arc to go from like football into property investment. Or at least to me it sounds like it, but perhaps maybe it's not, I don't know. But what made you realise that, football alone wasn't enough for you? You want to do something extra?
Do you know, sometimes I often get asked that, and I think that for me it was during the pandemic. I was 25 at the time. I'd saved up a little bit of money. I was on furlough, as a lot of us were during COVID. And long story short, I'd saved up a little pot of money and I didn't quite know what to do with it. Nobody was kind of advising me or helping me. And going back a little bit further, I went to New York for university. So when I left Nottingham Forest at 18, I decided to go down that route and got a scholarship in America, studied economics. So as I came back and played football, my way of kind of carrying on my economics was investing in stocks and shares and things like that. So I kind of put my money into that and liked to fiddle around with different stocks and shares, and that was a bit of a hobby of mine. And I remember at the time I was playing football up in Hartlepool. I spoke to a teammate of mine about my investments, and he said to me, I've just bought a couple of houses. And I thought I'd never heard that before, because I thought that houses were something that you bought in your 40s and 50s and didn't really kind of know much about it. He told me a little bit about it and I decided to look into it. I didn't think a mortgage would be possible because a lot of football contracts are quite short, they're 1 or maximum 2 seasons. But looked into it, did a lot of research, and long story short, bought a property as a buy-to-let. Made a few mistakes and probably didn't buy the right one at the right time, but realised it was a good idea. Bought another one, remortgaged, bought another one, and got to a point where I think I had 4 properties at the time.
Wow. At what age?
I was 27, 28 maybe. And I remember I was buying 2 at the same time at this point, and I was on the phone to a solicitor on the way to training. I've now changed clubs again. I was at Scunthorpe at this point, in a car full of teammates, and I was having a bit of stress with the solicitor on the phone. And some of my teammates were kind of asking me a million questions about what it was I was doing and why I was doing it, and I ended up basically explaining it to them. Ended up helping some teammates kind of do the same thing. Yeah. And then I quickly realised that it wasn't just me that was in that situation, and there was a lot of footballers that were in a similar situation where they'd saved up a bit of money. Nobody at your kind of lower leagues, I don't know what it's like in the Premier League, but no, in your kind of lower leagues where people are earning, decent wages, but they're not getting advice on what to do with it. a lot of them are kind of the non-league football sphere is very volatile. So you can be on double your wages next year or maybe half your wages next year, and if you're doing really well, you could be offered to sign for Gateshead in the northeast or Yeovil in the southwest, and people are kind of moving around quite a lot. So a lot of players don't necessarily want to buy a house to live in, but they don't really know much about property investment. Nobody tells them anything. So when I signed for Macclesfield, my training schedule changed slightly. So they just train on a Tuesday and a Thursday. So I thought, it might be an opportunity for me to, I was 28 at the time, I thought it might be an opportunity to set up something else for me for kind of life after football. And I thought, what else am I passionate about? And it was property. So I set up the Footballers Property Group as a way of kind of doing what I was doing already in terms of helping teammates, but doing it on a more professional level and kind of putting it out there a little bit, because I'd always been previously quite private about my investments. And it kind of took off really well. I realised that having had, I think at the time, I did 9 teams in 6 years. So I had 250 ex-teammates and thousands of kind of teammates of teammates, and the network was massive. And a lot of footballers trust other footballers. Obviously, I'm still in the changing room now, so I still I'm one of them.
You're the go-to guy
exactly,
for property
exactly, and I kind of didn't anticipate as well how many people on the other side of it. So, estate agents sending me properties off market and that sort of thing, and it all kind of tied in really well. So it's worked really well around my football, and yeah, it's something I'm proud of.
That's a brilliant story. When you finally, launched the brand, did your teammates think you were just mental, trying to do both at the same time?
I'll be honest with you, a lot of them kind of didn't really understand it. I think that I've got fairly supportive teammates, but I think property investment is something that seems quite confusing. It's something that if you know somebody that does it, it's a way of getting into it, but somebody doesn't kind of tend to wake up one morning without any knowledge and decide they want to get into.
Out of reach for some people, might not realise.
Exactly. And
how,
I think
if they don't know how it's done, they might not understand it. You might be a little bit afraid of it potentially, but you're helping that sort of process then.
Yeah, I think the buying process can be quite intimidating, with solicitors and the amount of paperwork and things like that. So I think that it can be a bit overwhelming. And one thing that helped us quite a lot is early on we did a few kind of property networking seminars where we invited players to come down for free. We had an evening in the centre of Manchester and put on a little bit of a seminar just explaining what it is, what we do. Got a few guest speakers down, so players, ex-players that have played at the Premier League and really high levels, and come and speak about their experience as well. So it's a great opportunity for people to kind of dip their toe in and understand a little bit more, and we've done 3 of them and they've gone really well as well. So
that's a nice offline meet and greet for people to get together and network as well, so that's great. Would you say that people have a misconception about footballers and their money?
Yeah, I think that there's a couple of things on that. I think that a lot of people have misconception on footballers and their money, because you see your top level players, and I think that a lot of your lower level players may have been in. So for example, I've had teammates that have played for Manchester United and Manchester City up until they were kind of 20, 21, 22. They get released, they come down to your Macclesfields and teams like that, and then they still want to kind of pridefully wise want to be seen to be earning good money, and you end up kind of, if you've always had a lot of money and you're spending it like that, you can kind of end up living to your means a little bit and not saving, because a lot of players that are kind of mid-20s are earning good money playing football, more than they would be in another job, but it's not the type of money that's going to last you the next 30 years of your career, because football's a short career. So I think that a lot of players have that kind of misconception where they always think that they're going to earn more and more money, and that's not the case. You might be 22 years old and be on the best money you're ever going to be on. So I think there's not enough education in terms of helping players to manage their money either.
Yeah, being wise with it whilst you have it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Have you ever felt pressure balancing football and your business?
Yeah, I think so. I think that with football comes a lot of pressure anyway, and I think especially a few years ago, it was very kind of important culturally in football, to make football the main focus always. But I think it's definitely becoming a bit more common now that people do kind of other things on the side as well, and it's not kind of shied away from. I think that for me, trying to manage my business, when I initially started it, it was very much a one-man band. and it's grown now. I've got a business partner, we've got really good relationships with people that we work with, and it's definitely grown and become a lot more streamlined.
That's great. You can share the weight.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it definitely comes with its stresses, but it's something that I definitely enjoy.
Yeah. It's nice to have balance is key, isn't it? Yeah. It must be very rewarding, what you do from the start to seeing the end property transformation. If you can tell me this, what's one memorable property transformation that you've been a part of? Is there one that comes to mind?
Yeah, one that we did at the back end of last year. With the kind of renters' rights changing in the UK at the minute, I think that a lot of the landlords that have owned properties for decades are probably wanting to, call it time and get out a little bit. And I think that one thing that we try and focus on is for our players, and non-footballers as well, we try and emphasise that it's not something that is going to make you a millionaire overnight. Property investment is a long-term thing. So investing in a property in your 20s is going to serve you really well later in life. So we've been able to capitalise on some of those opportunities with older landlords looking to get out a little bit and get properties at a really good price. So we got one towards the end of last year for 140,000. I think we spent about £9,500 on it. It got remortgaged at £183,000, which we were really happy with. It wasn't kind of an overwhelming amount of work, but it was a really good opportunity for us. So that was one that immediately sprung to mind that I was happy about. Yeah.
Very good, very good. In your opinion, what do you think separates a house as a house, a nice wee house, compared to a home, a property that somebody wants to live in long term?
I think that at the minute, with obviously the renters' rights and things changing, one thing that I try and emphasise with my clients is making sure that the properties that we get, we get them up to a really good standard, so that we have tenants in there that want to look after it. They treat it like their own home, and it's about being, if they want to hold on to it long term, it's about being a good landlord and about treating people fairly and doing things right. And two things that I think are massive are the bathroom and the kitchen. I think that they are the two things that massively improve the value of the property. They're the two kind of statement things when you come into the house and everybody wants a nice kitchen to cook in and a nice bathroom to wash in. I think that those are two massive things that are really, really important. So they're two ways immediately that when I go into a house, we assess the state of the kitchen, we assess the state of the bathroom, we see if there are areas that we could improve, areas where we could add value straight away, and areas that we can potentially make tenants really, really happy long term.
They're definitely one of the key places that, when you're comparing properties, say you're on the hunt, you're looking for places to rent, if a property has a decent kitchen and bathroom compared to one that's maybe a bit done, or the taps are covered in line scale, it's the same price. You know which one you're going to go for, don't you, really?
Course,
the one that has a bit more time and effort put into it. We're going to talk a bit about bathrooms specifically at the moment. What would your dream recovery bathroom look like to you personally?
So for me personally, one thing I always like in a bathroom, one thing I'd aspire to have would be, his and hers sinks with my soon-to-be wife. I'm getting married in a few weeks.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. So I think I'd love that. I'd love a really nice bath, a large bath. And, in the showroom earlier, I saw the shower with the steam room as well. I think that would be really, really nice. But I think just a really nice big mirror, a big kind of layout, is really nice and really comfortable. You want to be comfortable in your own home, and I think that to be able to have a nice luxury bathroom would be fantastic. And one thing that I've been really impressed with Bathshack is how affordable a lot of the really beautiful bathrooms are too.
We have a lot of additional options here at Bathshack in terms of relaxation. We have our jacuzzi baths as well,
oh wow,
which you can install.
Yeah, definitely.
Your under tile heating as well. And I think you also spied the smart toilet in there too,
Yeah,
didn't you? The heated seats and washers and all of this. So you can get so many crazy things for your bathroom now. But sounds like a very relaxing space that you're creating for yourself and your wife there.
I definitely like the toilet that kind of came up itself as well. I think that was fantastic.
Class, isn't it?
Yeah.
Bathrooms in general, they used to be a place where they were just functional, somewhere to go to get a shower, wash off the day. They're now becoming spaces that they're like wellness spaces. People go in, they leave their phone behind, they switch off, go for a hot bath, hot shower. Do you find that trend in the properties that you're working on?
Yeah, definitely. I think, emphasises the point of a nice bathroom can massively add value to the property. I think you see it as well with the kind of increase in spas and those sort of things. I think that people massively focusing on, wellness. So I think that, having a high quality bathroom is really gonna add to the home for the people living in it, but it's also massively going to add to the value of the house too. And I think that it's a great way of doing so. But yeah, I think that there's some really, really nice different options within the bathroom now that you can obviously look to add for affordable prices.
So many. Manchester is changing so fast at the moment.
Yeah.
What are buyers looking for now that maybe they weren't looking at potentially 5 years ago?
It's a great question. I think that it's
Or has it stayed the same?
Well, I think that Manchester is becoming so much more vibrant, a lot younger, a lot more like London, I suppose. And I think that it's something that the property market has got to keep up with. You see the price of properties increasing so much. You see so many kind of luxury apartments popping up, and it's important to be able to keep up with that. It's important to be able to give, especially the young people, the spaces that they want and require. And I think your little things in bathrooms, so you kind of heated drying racks and things like that, are things that
they are so underrated. They're so useful.
Exactly.
A heated tile rail.
Little ways of obviously improving the space, impressing the people that are living in there, and making sure it's a place that they feel comfortable. I think gone are the days of your kind of very basic bathroom being enough, because especially in a place like Manchester, there's so many different fantastic options. It's becoming such a welcoming and livable place, especially for young people, as I said before, young professionals, and I think it's important to keep up with that.
Yeah. It's nice that we can add a bit of individuality to our bathrooms now by changing out taps or mirrors, these sort of things. There's definitely a wider selection out there now than maybe what there was.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm talking maybe 10-15 years ago, but
no, I agree. I think that when I first started getting into property 5 or 6 years ago, which isn't that long ago, but I think I kind of saw the back end of that, where you're very kind of common way to go was grey carpets, white walls, your very kind of basic bathrooms, just to kind of get anybody in there. And I think that nowadays the way that it's moving, and the way I envision it moving over the next few years, is that almost seems a bit too clinical, a bit too dull. And I think that just even walking through the showroom here, you see so much different character that you can add to the space. There's so many kind of affordable ways of making it unique, that I think that it would be a no-brainer to go down that route and give a bit more character to the space, and make it a lot more attractive and welcoming to each individual.
So we are here in the new Bathshack Manchester showroom, and you have done a walk around. What are your thoughts on the place, just in general?
Yeah, I think it's really, really good. Yeah,
worth a visit, isn't it? Yes.
No, I do. I think it's really impressive. When I first came in, I was obviously interested, as a business owner, but I was actually interested personally as well. I texted my fiance afterwards saying I'd love to bring her down here for when we're looking to.
It's hard not to be. I come in every day and I'm like, oh look, I like those tiles and I want that and like this. There really is a lot to see here.
There's a lot of the bathrooms that I can kind of see myself having. It's really, really impressive. And like I say, I was genuinely really impressed by the prices as well. I think that a lot of these fantastic bathrooms, when you go into different shops like these, you're kind of intimidated a little bit by the prices, but it's definitely affordable, and something that is to have a really nice bathroom. It's a lot more attainable than people might think.
Yeah, but at Bathshack it is anyway. Yes. So what instantly makes a property feel premium to you?
Just as I mentioned before, I think that what really makes a property feel premium is, as I mentioned, the kitchen and the bathroom. I think that when you've got something that is fresh, something that is a little bit different, as we mentioned before, the little bits like the taps, maybe a heated drying rail, a nice new bath and a toilet and things like that really kind of elevate a property. And, as an example, you see it with properties that are identical. I went and viewed 2 properties once that were literally next door to each other, the exact same layout, exact same floor plan and everything, but one of them was a lot higher standard than the other, and it was only little details, but those little details kind of in the kitchen and the bathroom result in one of the properties getting 20-30 bids, and the other one getting 2 or 3, because those little details definitely make a real difference, especially when people are viewing it as a place to live in long term.
Do you think your home reflects your mindset? For example, if you have a really busy life, maybe you want a quieter space for your home, or what do you think? Does your home reflect your mindset?
Yeah, I think, I was actually having this conversation the other day. I think that, first of all, a kind of clean and tidy home, I think definitely reflects your mindset. But I think that, having a space that you want to come back to, especially as you mentioned before, with a bathroom now being a space where you can kind of go in, switch off and enjoy. I think kind of having that space definitely kind of elevates that mindset. It's a place that you want to come back to, looking forward to being at home and having that space to relax. I definitely think can kind of improve your mindset overall. I think that living somewhere where you don't really want to be, somewhere that you don't really feel comfortable, is a position not really anyone wants to be in. So I think that having that option is only going to benefit people.
Yeah, so if you make your home a more balanced, tidier place, that can be reflected in your mindset. So
yeah,
you can help yourself by having a tidier space to live in.
Definitely.
In your opinion, what's one thing people should stop wasting their money on in home design?
Yeah, do you know what? Actually, this might be a bit of a unpopular opinion, but I think that people, the kind of trend of doing like your media walls in the lounge and things like that, and kind of going down that route, I think people are probably coming away from that a little bit now. Often these kind of media walls of kind of putting the TV into the wall and all that sort of thing, I think became really popular at one point. It's not a cheap thing to do. I think that, if I was, being advised by a client that they wanted to do that, I'd probably try and steer them away from it and say, it's probably not the way that things are going. So I think that's one thing for me. I think that these kind of high-tech living rooms are probably not as popular as they used to be.
Yeah, that's fair. What features make homes stand out to you in today's market?
I think that, like we said, it's the small details in the kitchen, in the bathroom, the little things that give that space character. So it's not as I mentioned before, the kind of white walls and kind of basic tile floors that it used to be. I think little bits that make that space different, that bring luxury, that are kind of really clean and new. I think that those little bits that make the house memorable. When you viewed 4 or 5 different houses in the day and you really remember that one bathroom that had the really nice sink or the really nice taps, whatever it may be, those small little details are things that are proven really popular.
Nice. Those things that are maybe a bit more planned out.
Yeah.
Before they're listed.
Yeah, definitely.
Get the bids in, as you say.
Definitely.
Cool. Can a badly designed bathroom genuinely put buyers off?
Yeah, I think that, as I mentioned before, I think that you often see when you've got a house that is, really well designed with the kitchen and the bathroom, I think that, you'll see a lot more buyers on that property, because I think that a lot of people, when they're buying the house, they're buying it as they see it, ready to move in and treat it like a home. They're not necessarily seeing it as something that they want to renovate, especially if it's been renovated recently but not done well. So I think that making sure that you get the design right is definitely going to attract the right buyers, and there's so many options nowadays with bathrooms. It's important that you do it well, and do it to a high standard.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Yeah, if it is designed badly, it would put people off.
Definitely, yeah.
What's the biggest mistake people make when they're designing their homes?
Do you know what? I think that one mistake that people make quite a lot, especially in the bathroom, but also all over the house, is that people will find products that they like, not necessarily think about the space, and then once they get it in the house, try and kind of make it all work together. That's definitely not the best way to A, utilize the space, and B, make most use of their money, and making sure that they think about the layout properly and how to kind of best make use of that, and fit it all in properly. So I think that is one mistake that people definitely make. They see an item before they've even bought the house and think, I'll have that in my house, and then don't think about how it's all going to fit together.
It's true. It's definitely worth calling in the likes of Bathshack, where we can help you choose the right tiles first and then help you pick your sanitary ware so it will fit for your space. So
yeah, that's definitely a big help, because I think that a lot of people, when they have somebody come and do that, and they can see kind of how it's all going to look and envision it better than they could themselves, and have kind of a specialist come and do it for them, it's definitely going to benefit them.
It helps visualize what you can actually do with your real space rather than getting carried away with a giant bath might not fit in your ensuite bathroom.
Or even if it does, making sure that it fits in the right space and it's kind of all done correctly.
Yeah, absolutely. So what is the pain in the long-term game of property investment?
I think that initially it can be a difficult process. I think that it's really important that the clients of mine, we make sure that they kind of make those initial steps and get that foundation right. Because I think that, if you buy a property the wrong way, so you buy it, with the wrong mortgage, or you buy it perhaps in your own name when it could have been bought in a limited company, or whichever way that you do it, if you don't do it correctly, it can really cost you long term. When it comes to selling that property, you may overpay on tax, or you may not necessarily make the best use of your money. And I think that, obviously during that process, getting those early steps right, making sure that you get the renovations done properly, making sure that you get it to the right standard. I think, making sure that you get the right tenants in, because, the tenants that aren't necessarily what you might want can be really costly as well. So I think making sure that we get all those little bits right, in the long term, it's going to be a lot easier for you. It's going to be a lot smoother. That's something that us at Footballers Property Group manage for our clients, in terms of that buying process and making sure that it all goes well and it's done in the right way, so that they can benefit obviously from the price increase of the property over time, the rental yield, and they've got something that's going to serve them well long term. I think that you see it obviously compounding when one of our clients has got multiple properties over a long time. They're able to remortgage, they're able to sell it and make a lot of money on that, and obviously getting the rental yields as well. So I think that there's different ways that they're able to benefit off that, obviously as time goes on and you see the housing market increase. But I think that making sure that you get those foundations right at the start is really, really important.
Very important. And you're there to advise on all those stages.
Yeah, so I
process.
think that, one thing that we pride ourselves on is, I'm not selling people something that I've not done. It's making sure people don't make the mistakes I made. I bought a house, the first one that I bought was in my own name. It probably wasn't the best move. I did a bad renovation. I've used the wrong solicitor. I've used the wrong mortgage advisor. I've had renovations that have cost me money rather than made money on them, and I've made a lot of mistakes, and it's making sure that I learn from those and direct people in the right way. So we're experienced. We're trying to do things for people the right way, and like I said, we pride ourselves on our relationships and our jobs that we do for our clients.
It must be very easy to relate to your customers, your network people, because you have had these experiences yourself. You really can speak from your own experience. I'm sure that goes a long way.
Yeah, I think definitely. I think that, because I'm still playing football as well, because it's not something that I did 20 years ago, I think that, being in that kind of age bracket with the people as well, and being able to help them and advise them. And as I say, these are all quite recent things for me, but, we've gained a lot of experience in a short space of time. And then my business partner, he's slightly older with a lot more experience as well. So we've got that angle as well. So we're able to, keep people pleased, keep people happy, and do a good job for people as well. Because as I mentioned before, it can be quite an overwhelming industry to come into with no experience.
Sounds like a great team you've got with you.
Yeah, definitely.
It's great. Okay, I've got some fun questions just to end on now. Well, not that they weren't fun, but I've got more fun ones to do. Would you rather own 10 properties or play Premier League football for a full season?
It's a brilliant question. And I think the answer, I'm going to sit on the fence here. My answer is probably playing the Premier League, but it depends who for, and it depends on what properties I owned instead.
Okay, very diplomatic.
But I think I'd say playing the Premier League. Yeah.
That's where your heart lies.
Yeah.
What is more stressful, missing an open goal or signing your first property deal?
Well, I'd like to think that my clients don't have that stress of signing their first property because I'm managing it for them. Missing an open goal, I've done it plenty of times, so it's a bit disheartening. But I think that there is stress with property, especially when you don't know what you're doing. It can be ongoing, it can be very overwhelming, and I think that a reason that my business has done quite well is because that it is quite a confusing market, and you see people struggle without the kind of right guidance. So I'd probably say that the first property can be a little bit more stressful.
Yeah, fair. What conversations happen in dressing rooms that fans maybe wouldn't expect?
Oh, all sorts. I think that teammates probably speak a little bit more about their home lives more than football a lot of the time. I think that it can be different. Dressing rooms are different, but in general, that you often find that when you speak to teammates closely, you get to know them on a completely different level, because you might only speak about football for a while and then you don't know a lot about different people, but everything and anything teammates speak about. Yeah, definitely, especially when you're kind of spending a lot of time together, traveling to different away games and staying in hotels and things together, you end up speaking about anything.
Absolutely. Anything, and property investment's probably one of it as well.
Yeah, at some point, yeah, definitely. Definitely.
What traits make someone successful both on the pitch and in property investing?
Do you know, I was having that conversation the other day too. I think that there's a massive overlap. I don't think it's coincidence that footballers get into property investment, because I think that, as I mentioned before, football's a short career, and there's a lot of time after that to kind of make sure that change in finances and change in lifestyle after your career kind of goes as smoothly as possible. But I think that there's a lot of traits that translate in both. I think that going through your property investment and renovating a property takes a lot of discipline financially, and making sure you're kind of sticking to a schedule, sticking to a timeline. I think that footballers have a unique way of being able to stay disciplined 24/7, even though football is a 90-minute game on a Saturday. I think that making sure that you can kind of deal with pressure, because I think that there's a lot of pressure in property investment, making sure that you're sticking to budgets and timelines, as I mentioned before. Same way with football. I think that having that focus, being able to see a long-term picture. I think, for me, coming back from an injury, or for a team, when you're working all season, you're working for a trophy at the end of the season. And I think that in property investment, it's important to know that, it's not as soon as you get those keys, it's kind of job done. There's a long-term picture to it as well. The list goes on. I think there's a lot of ways that they translate. But I think the fundamentals of both are, discipline, hard work, seeing that long-term picture, being able to persevere, being able to not be put off by the small little details that might seem a little bit tough or overwhelming, and being able to kind of ride out those bumps and understand that it's a long game.
There really is such an overlap, isn't there?
There is, yeah.
It really is. Quite poetic, isn't it? Outside of football, what would you like your legacy to be?
Don't know. I think that genuinely I set up the Footballers Property Group as a way of helping people. I think that I've realised that there was a bit of a gap with myself and what I'd been through in terms of not getting that guidance. So I think genuinely the more people that I can help make a difference to themselves and their lives and their families, the better. Genuinely I got into the property investments myself because when I was younger, when I first started playing and I was in a dressing room and I wasn't earning that great money at all, but I saw some of my teammates that were, and saw the way it was wasted and the way teammates retired at 35 and had to go into, one of them went into being a gardener and one of them went into being an Amazon delivery driver, and there's nothing against those jobs at all, but there was the pressure of, having children and having a mortgage to pay and things like that. And I thought, if I can use my money while I'm still playing to just make that process a little bit easier, that'll be fantastic. And that's why I got into it myself. It definitely brings me a lot of joy being able to speak to a player or anybody young that's kind of in their early 20s, mid 20s, and say, look, if you make these decisions now, it's only going to serve you better long term, rather than spending, still enjoy your life, but rather than spending that money on nights out and cars and clothes, if you can put a little bit aside and make that process easier, it's going to make your life a lot better in the future. So when I kind of see that click made in somebody's brain and kind of translate them in that direction, that brings me a lot of joy. So the more I can do that, the more people I can help. I would like that to almost be the legacy of the business, if you will.
That's brilliant. What a good goal. What would 18-year-old Danny think of the man you are now?
He'd probably think he's boring. I think 18-year-old Danny was very, very different. 18-year-old Danny was typical of an 18-year-old now. I think that presumes that everything's going to work out, and anything that's not playing football is probably a little bit boring. I think that I was always quite bright and inquisitive. When I left Nottingham Forest, as I say, I went out to New York to play football and study. But to be honest with you, I think going out to New York was more for the excitement and the lifestyle rather than the education. But I'd like to think that he'd be proud and be happy with the balance of being able to manage still playing football and doing other things as well.
What is the ultimate footballer bathroom essential?
The ultimate footballer bathroom essential, from what I've seen in the showroom, is either going to have to be a jacuzzi bath after a game, to be nice and relaxed, because sometimes when I walk back through the door, I feel like I've been beaten up. So I think that would be lovely to come home to. And I'm also going to say the automatic toilet that opens up for you, because again, sometimes on a Sunday morning after a Saturday game, you're hurting all over, and it would be nice to just be able to walk into the bathroom and sit down.
Very easy.
So that'll be
it also has a heated toilet seat, pressure washers, lights, customizable settings for you and whoever else in the house. So
that'd be nice. That'd be very nice.
Smart toilet. Just one last question for you. Who is going to win the 2026 World Cup this year?
I think it would be wrong of me not to say England. I'd love them to, of course. Do I think France might win it? Maybe. But I'd like England to win it, yeah. Definitely.
Okay, that's a good answer. Danny, thank you so much. Where can people keep up to date with what you're up to? Have you got any socials?
People can follow Footballers Property Group on Instagram, on TikTok, on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube. We post a lot of little details about, commonly asked questions, answering them, showing a little bit about the properties that we're working on, and people can feel free to send me a message on there too. I tend to respond fairly quickly, and come along for the journey.
That's great. Thank you so much for joining us today here at the Manchester Showroom. Thanks very much.
Okay. Thank you.